2015, when the company first started, we were the first to do fee-free banking in Vietnam, so free ATM withdrawals, transfers. In the last couple of years, we've spent a lot of time focusing on managed money. Our average customer will transact 27 times a month on Timo, so that's once a day pretty much. The Timo customer is actually quite affluent. Vietnam GDP per capita is about $4,500, pushing 5,000 now.
Okay.
The average Timo customer will transact about $10,000 a year on Timo.
Oh, wow.
GDP.
Okay. So you're top of the Louis Vuitton wallet.
I'm going to use that.
Welcome, everybody, to Bank Tellers. My name is Zach Anderson Pettet, VP of Fintech Strategy here at Money 2020. And I have a very special guest with me here today that I feel like I've known for 10 years, but we've officially known each other for about 10 seconds. We're coming up on like 5 minutes. We have an anniversary coming up soon.
It's starting to come.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And I've asked twice, so if I mess it up, it's really going to be a problem. Jonas, but I'm going to mess up the last name. Give it to me.
Eichhorst.
See, this is the fun part is getting to learn all of the very exciting last names. And he is the Chief Executive Officer at Timo Vietnam. Welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing today?
Thank you. All good. All good.
Good. So it's day 3 of Money 2020. How's it been? How you doing?
Intense.
You're above ground.
I'm above ground, still alive. No, it's been a really fun, good experience.
Good.
I was sharing with your colleagues, I've been hearing a lot about Money 2020 over the years.
Yeah.
Never made it. It's actually my first one. And
welcome.
Yeah, no, it's been an experience.
I like to hear it. Good. Well, time for the next experience. So let's jump into it. So, the name of the show is The Bank Tellers. So we get you to tell us about the bank. Pretty straightforward. Would love to know, obviously, a lot more about Timo, but would love to even start further back from that as to how you got there. So give us a little bit of your background, how you got there, like I said. But there was one specific piece when I was doing some creeping that I would love to double down on, and that is board advisor technology to 7-Eleven Vietnam.
Yeah.
Super random, or not super random, but like sounds absolutely fascinating, but not exactly maybe correlated to what we're talking about here, or maybe it is. So yeah, take us through kind of like how you got to where you are today, and if you can give me a little insight on the 7-Eleven part, I'm fascinated.
Yeah, it's been a weird journey.
So it's been fun.
It's been definitely fun.
There you go.
Definitely unexpected.
Yeah.
So yeah, originally from Germany, technology background, moved to Singapore in 2008 in what was supposed to be a 3-month kind of semester, which turned into
famous last words.
Exactly.
Yep.
That was when I kind of first got exposed to startups, entrepreneurship, all of that. And so then over the next couple of years was in different tech roles mainly, and in about 2014 started in Vietnam with a tech company that we then ended up selling a few years later. So that was kind of the first big endeavor. That's where 7-Eleven actually comes from, because we actually, when 7-Eleven launched in Vietnam, they built all of our tech from scratch in 2016-17, which was a huge bet.
Why?
So the gamble... And I promise it has also a relation with Timo. And
even
all
if
of
it
that.
doesn't, I'm just fascinated.
But the gamble was that even though obviously location matters a lot,
sure,
but information systems matter even more. Yeah. So logistics, information systems, and it's very hard to retrofit. Everybody talks about digital transformation. But the idea was do digital creation from scratch. And it's easiest in the beginning. And so, yeah, that seems to have panned out pretty well for them, because to this date, they're it's an omni-channel from day one on. Heavy CRM, customer loyalty focus, all of that. So
I love it. They checked all the buzzwords. They
pretty much
They started from scratch.
Exactly. And actually now the CEO is a good friend of mine. Now he's all over AI. So him and I are geeking out over AI day and night. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. So in terms of the actual tech side, what did you study in university? Were you an engineer by training?
It was a double degree, so technically business computing, meaning actually. Yeah. And the funny thing about my university, usually business computing tends to be kind of half IT, half business,
Yeah.
of shallow.
Yeah.
My university went kind of on the opposite end of down the deep end on both tech and on business.
That sounds great.
Well, it was challenging, but yeah.
Well, I guess that's the thing about after you're on the other side of university, you have a very different perspective.
Exactly.
I wish I would have been able to do that honors thing at this place. And, you figure out, that would have taken me 70 hours a week, and I probably would have had gray hair by the time I was 14. Wait, that's not how college works. 21,
Kind of.
Day 3 of Money 2020, everyone. 2020 is the only numbers I'm going to get correct today. Okay, so kind of trained in both worlds.
Exactly. Trained in both worlds. Did the crossover.
Which did you feel you wanted to run more towards? Do you identify as an engineer? At that point, kind of what was your internal perception of yourself?
I think it was a crazy story, actually, even going further back.
Let's hear it.
So I told my parents when I was 13 that I'm not learning enough in school anymore and I'm going to drop out.
I love that.
I'll do a tech company.
I love that.
Startup. So this was around
you seem like a non-evil Zuck. I like it.
Well, definitely in many areas very different, but very much to my parents' credit. They had much better logic than me because their point was, if you're going to do a tech company, shouldn't you learn how to code first?
That logic thing will get you. Yeah, exactly. That's a really fair point they had there.
So that Christmas, it was C++ in 21 days under the Christmas tree. That was the start of my engineering, so to speak, kind of, I wouldn't call it career or whatever. But so I came from hardcore engineering.
Right.
Then by the time of university was kind of a little bit on both sides.
Yeah.
And so nowadays, whilst I still enjoy the intellectual side of both engineering and coding and like to go quite deep, but most of my time, actually, I'm not even sure if it's on the business side or if it's more on the people side.
Yeah. Well, those things tend to fit together very significantly. Do you find, and have you found that experience on the technical side has proven to show fruit on the business side, especially now that AI, and I imagine even in terms of thinking about, I don't know what term we're even using anymore, but if you want to call it blockchain, if you want to call it, DeFi, if whatever your term is, it seems like your ability to analyze these new technologies would be a lot faster than the average CEO.
I think it has been a huge advantage. I think, however, there's also the flip side. So as techies, and because I would still self-identify as a techie, I can speak
there you go.
Bad
he came
about
out.
us.
He came out. Okay, there we go. All right.
But we also tend to be very arrogant in terms of believing that tech is the only thing that matters and it's going to change everything, and kind of forget about human psychology and that whole side of the equation.
So you have been to a cryptocurrency conference?
No comment.
Just kidding.
But I'll remember, speaking of crypto, I remember a friend of mine was huge on blockchain and how it's going to stop voter fraud and all of that. And then he explained to me how in a country I shall not name, fraud worked around elections. And in the end, it came down to, well, the guys in power are going to beat up everybody else if they don't vote correctly.
Yeah.
And my question to him was, how does blockchain
stop
the beating up the people?
Yeah.
And so I think in whether it is in crypto and finance, in a lot of these areas, yes, technology as an enabler, of course, is super powerful, and having a deep grounding and understanding what can feasibly work in technology or what's just fluff.
Yeah.
That's very useful, but the other side I actually find even more interesting around, using technology for what? So I tend to be relatively cynical on that side of what the technologies are being pushed for in terms of what the actual true impact is.
But that sounds like even bigger competitive advantage, because I think one of the things, I don't know, I'm kind of losing track of time, but I think it was 2024 when every single board in the entire universe said, you have to do AI, you have to do it now. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it makes sense. I really don't care about anything, but I need to put it in our next, actual earnings report that we did something, right? It sounds like you're not just going to hype chase. You're not just going to chase a trend, because you're actually thinking through the utility and the actual usefulness of the thing, not just a plaything to put in there to make your board happy.
So to be totally blunt, and this is not very popular, but I'm not necessarily a cryptocurrency, how should I say, fanatic.
I'm not either. Yeah, you're not.
There are certain areas where probably there is value, but I haven't really seen that for Timo.
Do you find value in? Do you see potential and find value in the infrastructure?
Potentially,
Okay.
but that's the same as in any other infrastructure. Infrastructure out with
a fair point.
usage.
Yeah.
And then what is the usage that this infrastructure blocks?
Yeah, that's fair.
And there are definitely areas in Vietnam. There's also regulatory kind of questions and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we haven't really seen that transformational necessarily huge leverage yet.
Yeah.
AI is something very, very different in my view.
Yeah.
Because AI ultimately, in my view, comes down to unlimited intelligence that you can tap into, turn on and off. And if digital transformation was all about getting data digital so you can replicate, transmit at pretty much no cost, that's cool. But what do you do with data? You need to have the intelligence to tap into that.
Yep.
Now, what I actually see, however, for us, actually, I want to use AI to make Timo the most human company possible instead of using AI in order to make Timo the most efficient, anonymous, fully automated,
Soulless.
If you're a quant trader or whatever, yes.
That was a good
you wanna be
transition
that.
from soulless to quant trader. You nailed
You
that.
go. Almost as if I'd prepared for
Maybe
this.
I'm gonna have to edit that part out. I think I might have. Anyways, we might have a couple sponsors that might not love that. Anyways, I love you,
actually,
Citadel.
No. I'll be very honest. I think there's nothing wrong with building that kind of business. There are certain businesses where absolutely it is about efficiency, about lowest cost and all of that automation. And that's great.
Yeah.
Even in retail banking, there's probably a place for that because there's always, you look at Porter's, whatever, 5-4 is different models.
Yeah.
There's going to be the low cost, but there's then also the kind of value quality side.
Right.
And so I think for us, even though we have a very strong tech DNA and very strong kind of capabilities, I actually am much more excited and interested in how we can use that, which will become table stakes. And sooner or later, every company will have AI properly rolled out, blah, blah, blah. But how we can use that to immediately jump onto the human side and differentiate on that, not going into the automatic, we automated it, so let go of everybody. But rather, we automated it, we freed up people. Now, how can we get those people to be the most human possible? Because the gamble is that customers want that human connection. Money is so emotional.
Doesn't feel like a big gamble, by the way.
It should. Well, on the one hand,
it's a gamble to sure. It's new. It's not new. Change is scary. All that.
It
but
sounds kind of obvious.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I guess. I mean, yeah.
But it's the same as if you look at a lot of financial institutions, and I'm not going to make a lot of friends here saying that, but a lot of financial institutions, you look at their claims, their kind of mission statements, and we start from you, we understand you, we love you for a better future, and it's all very emotional on the one hand.
Yeah.
But the customer never feels like, hey, this is actually really emotional because it just seems kind of weird, shallow. So how do you actually build this true emotional resonance and this connection?
Yeah.
And can you do that or can you not do that? Because there's a lot of smart people. There's a lot of good people working in finance, but somehow the industry doesn't seem to have cracked that. So that's, I guess, where this gamble comes from, that we would be able to break through.
I guess I would almost call it a race instead of a gamble, right? Like I don't see that gamble not paying off, but who gets there first and who does it the best in the execution layer, maybe that's the other piece.
True.
Okay, I need to be a good podcast host, and as I said, it feels like we've known each other for 10 years. So we're gonna come back. We're gonna keep talking about you, but we got to talk about Timo. We've alluded to it. I don't know how many minutes in we are now, but we should probably talk about the company that you run. So tell me about Timo. Tell me about kind of the overarching piece, where you're focused. Like, just give us the background, how it was founded, all that.
Absolutely. So even though we call ourselves still a startup or maybe scale up, we've been around for a while. So we just did our 10-year anniversary 2-3 weeks ago.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, when you said that, I was thinking you've been around too long for that. But okay, go ahead.
Exactly. So usually the way that I'd introduce Timo is we're a 10-year-old company, which essentially got kind of refounded 5 years ago. So 2015, when the company first started, we were the first to do fee-free banking in Vietnam, so free ATM withdrawals, transfers, and given the podcast seems to be colloquial, I'll use the language, an app that doesn't suck.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
That was kind of revolutionary back then and good enough as differentiation.
Yeah.
Vietnam, no digital banking licenses back then, still not today. So you needed to have a sponsor partner bank.
Was that a hard process?
So this was before my days.
Oh, yeah, I guess it would have been. Yeah.
So I only know the war stories from back then.
Well, the fact that you're saying war stories, can I make a jump and a guess that the war stories might have led to that 5-year transition and taking a lot of that more in-house, having control, and now being able to build in a direction you actually have control over?
That may be a fair assessment.
Okay.
With the extra flavor that we actually changed license partner 5 years ago. So technically, the business kind of moved and restarted 5 years ago. And so what also happened is that this was almost before COVID. So this was in 2019 when 2021 COVID peak period. So by then, Vietnamese banking has also become hyper competitive. So fee-free banking is pretty much table stakes now. I wish I could say we force the market to do it. Maybe not. But
I mean, to draw an American, you sound like Chime. It sounds like, or one of those, like very early on, did a lot of things that really the banks were like, I'm not doing that. And then, oh shit, we have to do that or else they're going to eat our lunch.
Yep. So now, today for Timo, fee-free is not the key anymore. We're still fee-free, but that's not the hook.
That can't be the USP anymore. Yep.
Exactly. The way we think about money, and again, coming from a non-financial background, there is ultimately only 5 things that you can do with money. You can move money, so everything around payments, transfers, all of that. You can manage money, everything around budgeting, tracking, all of that. You access money, so lending, of course. You can grow money, wealth products, whatever, and then you can protect money, everything around insurance. So we started with a money movement, fee-free, and that was great. In the last couple of years, we've spent a lot of time focusing on managed money. So today, the key value proposition, Timo, is very transaction-centric, transaction-driven. Our average customer will transact 27 times a month on Timo, so that's once a day pretty much. Our top.
So you're top of wallet.
And the other thing that is important, we talk about wallet, but the Timo customer is actually quite affluent. So different from a lot of digital banks or
so wallets. You're top of the Louis Vuitton wallet.
I'm going to use that. I haven't heard that one before. Okay, I'm going to use the Louis Vuitton wallet.
There you go.
So the average Timo customer, Vietnam GDP per capita is about $4,500, pushing $5,000 now.
Okay.
The average Timo customer will transact about $10,000 a year on Timo. So that's twice GDP.
Wow. Okay.
So you're from the US?
Yeah.
I think US GDP now is roughly...
don't ask me because we currently are in the process of creating tariffs that are going to impact that so dramatically that it shifts on such a regular basis that I don't even know if the dollar is going to be the currency that we talk about a few years from now. So I don't know if I should have said that, but it's true. It's where we are. And I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. So I think last I checked, if it's somewhere in the 80, 100K or whatever, kind of, that's the same as if somebody transacts $200,000 worth. In the US. So that's obviously not entry
These
level.
are high net worth individuals.
These are mass affluent now in Vietnam because the country is developing very quickly.
Right.
This transaction excellence, that's very, very important. It is for micro wallet transactions. So digital has taken over everything in Vietnam. So buying a coffee, but it also includes big payments. So whether that is your rental payments, your stock account top ups, insurance, whatever. So it covers the entire kind of width of that.
Do you do anything? I mean, that sounds like you could also do a lot of work around estate planning and kind of really turn into a not pain in the ass high net worth money manager. Because I mean, like luckily, I hope one day to actually be in a position to be having these conversations. But at this point, I'm not. But because of the role that I'm in, I tend to sit around a lot of billionaires and be jealous of their situation and whatnot. But they got a guy, right?
Yeah.
But having the guy like only gets them so far, and also the guy's not an app, right? Like the guy, like, and I have to say it in a New York accent or else it doesn't work. What we're talking about are very different things, and the ability to have my high net worth needs solved in a digital fashion. I don't think I've ever even heard of a company that's focused. Well, there's companies in the U.S. have tried to do it and compete with American Express or something like that.
Yeah.
They're all dead.
So the funny thing for us, To be a billionaire in Vietnam, the good news is a billion VND is about $40,000. So
what do you make what would be considered a yearly like high net worth income ish?
Well, most high net worth would be self-made or would be business people.
Sure.
There's a ton of millionaires in Vietnam.
But if I was making like $50,000-$60,000 a year,
you would be definitely at the top end.
Could be a Timo customer.
You would be a Timo customer. So the funny thing about us, because we start from transaction excellence, ultra high net worth individuals and first bank account ever people.
Yeah, you got a strong bell curve.
Exactly, because they all need that. Now, our relevance, and back to the other three money functions of access, grow, and protect, the products for those segments are super different. So that's why we work with a lot of different partners to then route you to those different products, because starting from a transaction piece, we kind of understand who you are and where that relevance is. So Timo, of course, we don't have a big number of ultra high net worth individuals where they bank entirely with Timo.
Right.
But
because they got a guy.
They got a guy. But for their daily transactions, we're the guy.
Right.
And so kind of going from the unhappily banked with many different bank accounts, kind of getting them slowly over and building that trust and all of that. That is kind of some of the area where Timo is positioned a little bit differently. Very inclusive. So we don't kind of segment that way, but just from that daily engagement, more human friendly, all of that relevance from the transactions branch out.
It's interesting because I actually think there's something, I mean, I think we're moving into, I don't know, you can debate second, third, fourth wave of fintech in the US, so however you want to calculate it. But I think there's something really interesting to be learned from the idea of being inclusive, but now I'm going to get crazy here, starting with a profitable population, right? Like we, in the US, we did this thing where we're like, we're going to help the underbanked first. And it's like, oh, wait, okay, we're going to shut down. There was no money there. Like, you know, but the idea of building this very, you know, kind of Goldman Sachs-esque, you know, you want to be there one day, but, you know, but Marcus, existed, and you know, you can at least start your journey there. Like, it seems like that aspirational aspect of it and inclusive aspect of it while still being premium is really, really interesting. Like the Louis Vuitton thing, right? Like, I would love to own a lot of Louis stuff, call me a douchebag if you want, but I bought a wallet and it's like one of the favorite things I have, right? Just because I have a little bit of this Louis thing, like, you know, it's weird stuff like that. So I could see how that aspirational nature, no matter where you're at, like you want to be associated with it, and you probably want to, you know, pull out your Timo card and like you feel good about it.
Absolutely. And I think this also goes towards who tends to do well in these kind of economies, which are quickly developing. It's aspirational. It's people who are early adopters, who are driven. Yeah. So they're willing to try new things. They change their life all the time. Yeah. And so therefore they're also willing to try new services like Timo. Yeah. And then if the crazy thing is, even though a lot of our customers are early adopters, because you've got to be an early adopter to try a new digital bank. Right. But the loyalty then is actually also really, really, really high, because in a certain way, if a bank doesn't screw up, that's already better than most other places. So
not sucking is actually what we call a moat.
It's really weird. And I mean, it doesn't sound like strategic genius or anything.
But we're at a point at the end. I mean, granted, we're talking about different geographies, but like when you go back to especially the early days of fintech in the US, like if you built a product on a laptop, a phone, whatever it was, if I was able to get through the process without wanting to pick it up and throw it out the window, like, then you have officially done something groundbreaking.
Exactly.
And, like, if the fruit hangs low and you pick the fruit, great. Like, why is that a bad thing? You know, I think that's great.
And I think this goes even back to the 7-Eleven story, interestingly, because the CEO there, he once told me a very important thing. He said, retail is detail. And he was talking about convenience store, of course. Yeah. 7-Eleven in Vietnam, I'm not going to disclose any numbers, but the same store sales are significantly higher than any competitor. And when people ask why and what's the kind of silver bullet and all of that, and I will disclose, it's not a single silver bullet. It's just compounding of exactly that point of many different details. And it's the same, I think, in retail banking.
Yeah.
So what if you have got the best wealth product?
Yeah.
If you can't pass the sign-in screen or whatever,
Yeah.
then screw that.
One of my favorite Ben Horowitz quotes, and of course I might butcher it just a tad, but is there's no silver bullet, only a bunch of lead ones. And that sounds like what you're saying. And we still look for silver bullets right and left, but
all the time.
It just requires a lot of lead bullets executed correctly in a logical fashion, and not overthinking it.
That actually grit and speed of just continuously protecting that. Don't get into sucking.
Yeah.
Don't do stupid things.
Yeah.
And in a certain way, I mean, that's kind of what has allowed Timo to 10 years in still exist, which is more than 95% of whatever are startups.
Yeah. I love it. That's wild and fascinating. We're coming up on time, so I want to ask kind of my closing question. Well, yeah, we'll stick with this as the closing question. I kind of go a couple different directions on who I'm talking to, but since it's you, I'm going to go this direction. And now you're on the edge of your seat.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
So just based on your background, right? The 7-Eleven thing is just one thing I named, but you've done some fascinating stuff, and studying computer science, but also having the business side. So for you, it's actually a two-part question. One is, if you had advice for a younger individual, a Jonas back in the day, what advice would you give if they wanted to kind of end up in a similar position to you one day? The second piece I would ask, especially now that AI is coming to be, is what would you study? Would you study? Would you go to university?
So I think if the first one is easier.
Okay.
The advice I would give my younger self, the simple one would be have faith, but faith in ultimately just try and create as much interesting work across as many different areas as possible, because that increases the surface area of good things happening to you. I could never predict the path looking back, looking forward and all that. Yeah. It's the classic kind of, you can connect the dots backwards, but not moving forward. But you can kind of increase surface area, and the have faith part kind of comes in from, it could be many years of, in theory, is this really working or not? But I still have to find a person who's done that. And the little caveat, not being an idiot, as I call it, of doing something stupid somewhere where you say, well, that's why you're kind of stuck. Sure. But anybody who's kind of done that over a long enough time period, maximizing environment's value creation, has always ended up doing interesting things. So I guess that would be the advice or the learning.
It's good advice. I think especially in finance, we get so focused, in fintech, we get so focused on our own industry. And like one of the opening keynotes we had 2 days ago, again, time, I don't know, was actually the co-founder at Reebok, talking about the first AI developed shoe. Yeah. And, just like there were 3 or 4 things I took away from that I was like, oh, wow, that actually applies to real-time payments. It's bizarre, but like the breadth of it actually really does matter. And you don't have to answer the second one, but I am curious, like, would you go to university? Would you spend your time with ChatGPT? Would you, university GPT? How would you think about that today?
I'm thinking about it a lot, and I think humans in the long run are not going to differentiate on computing. So we got to figure out how can we differentiate on what it means to be a human, which is the humanities side of all that. I'm fascinated by anthropology, for example. I think our next marketing head needs to come from anthropology instead of from any growth hacking or whatever kind of background.
Interesting. So maybe it's like the resurgence of liberal arts.
I actually strongly believe so. We talked about business. I'm more interested in biological systems than in business study, because if you look at ecosystems, competitive threats, survival, niche carrying capacity, all those things from biology have huge application in business. But if nobody thinks that way, that kind of gives you an edge. So at the same time, I do think university will force you to work through something and not be able to kind of drop out easily. I think there's that grit is a big skill. So I probably would. I mean, you never know.
And maybe like learning to work with other people in teams and, some of that stuff.
Exactly. Again, maximizing that surface area. So
That's a good middle of the road, but like also an answer. I'll take it. I like it because it's
neutral.
I also don't think it's a question that anybody could confidently really answer right now. I think
at least not confidently, competently.
Oh yeah, exactly. Anyways, Jonas, thank you so much for the time, my friend. This has been an absolute blast. We're gonna have to do a follow up at some point.
Yeah, thank you. I loved it. Thank you very much. Thanks.